All right, welcome, focus learners, to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely shatter the way you might think about high IQ. When we hear the words extreme intelligence, we usually picture, a human calculator, right? Someone just standing there solving massive equations on a chalkboard in 5 seconds. But the psychology we're looking at today reveals a massive paradigm shift. Extreme intelligence isn't actually about raw speed or memorizing a bunch of obscure facts. It's really about experiencing a completely different reality. And understanding this hidden architecture doesn't just redefine genius, it can completely reframe how we view ourselves or the uniquely brilliant people in our own lives, finally moving us past those really outdated stereotypes. Okay, let's dive right into this with a quote that perfectly sets our foundation today. Real genius isn't about appearing smart in public, it's about how quietly your mind works when no one is watching. We are so incredibly conditioned to equate intelligence with visibility, right? The person who instantly shouts out all the trivia answers, or the loudest voice taking over a meeting. Society absolutely loves a fast, visible answer because, frankly, it's easy to measure. But that is just a profoundly flawed metric for true genius. At extreme levels, intelligence becomes way less visible and far more internal. True genius is this quiet, highly complex, and honestly deeply misunderstood process that's just running continuously in the background of a person's life, far, far away from the spotlight. So what does this actually mean? It means high intelligence fundamentally alters how you interact with the world. It completely rewires your core perception, your priorities, and even your fundamental identity. We really need to flip the script here and totally toss out society's myth of the loud know-it-all. If you're operating at this elevated cognitive level, your biggest shifts aren't external, flexing or performing for an audience. In fact, your identity often shifts entirely away from being a performer and moves toward becoming a deeply analytical observer. We're talking about profound, silent, internal changes in how you process existence itself. You're constantly analyzing the data of everyday life rather than trying to prove how smart you are to everyone else in the room. Section 1. The need for closure. Why geniuses lose interest quickly. Have you ever been called lazy or maybe a chronic quitter because you tend to drop hobbies or subjects incredibly fast? Well, psychology offers a completely different and frankly validating explanation for this. It's called rapid cognitive closure. Dropping a subject isn't laziness, and it is definitely not boredom. It's simply your brain hitting a point of closure because it already extracted the exact core logic and information it needed. Imagine spending intense hours learning a new coding language. The very moment you grasp the syntax and prove to yourself that yes, you absolutely can build the app, you abandon the actual project before writing those final lines of code. The mission is literally already accomplished in your mind. To really understand why this happens, let's contrast normal processing with high IQ processing. Now, the average person generally operates with a strong, culturally ingrained need for completion or repetition. They want to finish the entire book, get to the end of the course, or hold that physical certificate to prove they did the thing. But a highly intelligent mind? You're driven almost entirely by the search for that one click of understanding. The journey of decoding the puzzle is the whole reward. The split second that click happens, the challenge just evaporates. The actual mechanical completion of the task becomes totally mundane, and your mind immediately jumps away, frantically searching for the very next complex puzzle to decode. Section 2. The burden of translation. Chronic translation frustration. So moving from how your mind aggressively absorbs information, we now hit the roadblock of how it absolutely struggles to communicate it. And this brilliantly illustrates the problem. In your mind, thoughts exist as a deeply layered, instantaneous, and vastly interconnected web. You see the entire picture all at once. But when you're forced to push that through the bottleneck of human speech, those exact same thoughts come out compressed, abstract, and often really clumsy. Sharing your internal world becomes incredibly frustrating when the tools of everyday language just aren't built to handle your processing speed. You're basically forced to flatten a multi-dimensional, complex thought into a straight, linear line of words, which inevitably leaves out so much crucial context and nuance. I really want to validate any frustration you might be feeling here, because to you, it's not confusion, and your inability to just easily simplify your thoughts is absolutely not a lack of communication skills. You aren't bad at explaining things. It's the direct result of extreme processing speeds. Your thoughts are so rich in context and so heavily compressed that translating them for others literally feels like trying to pour an entire ocean through a tiny garden hose. Because of this massive bottleneck, highly intelligent people are so frequently misdiagnosed by society as being scatterbrained, socially awkward, or just poor communicators. But the reality, the profound complexity of your thoughts is just completely invisible to them. Section 3. The out-of-sync reality, operating on a different frequency. Now, this brings us to what I'd honestly consider the climax of our explainer. How this uniquely structured mind actually perceives the external world. It all boils down to a phenomenon called advanced pattern abstraction. This is your brain's unique ability to recognize underlying systems, timing, and really subtle behavior loops without anyone ever needing to point them out. For example, you might pick up on a shifting dynamic in your workplace, or pinpoint a fatal flaw in a complex corporate system weeks before anyone else even notices it, simply because the underlying variables are aligning in a recognizable loop. While everyone else is busy reacting to surface-level events, you're constantly seeing the invisible architecture of exactly why it's happening in the first place. But here is the catch. Extreme processing speed and pattern recognition come with a surprisingly heavy cost. Because you see these patterns so early, the external environment often feels like it's moving way too slowly. You might find conversations to be highly predictable because, well, you've already run the entire dialogue tree in your head before the other person even finishes their first sentence. You anticipate social routines long before they actually play out. And ultimately, living in this out-of-sync reality can make the everyday world feel really unstimulating. That creates a profound emotional weight. It breeds this core feeling of being deeply misunderstood and mentally isolated from the people around you, who seem, perfectly content with that slower pace. Section 4. The multi-layered mind. Thinking in webs, not lines. So let's look at the actual architectural structure of how the highly intelligent brain manages to hold all of this reality together. Most people use standard sequential thinking. They think in straight lines. It's one step at a time, cause and effect, strictly moving from point A to point B to point C. But at extreme levels of intelligence, your thinking is actually a multi-directional web. Your thoughts expand outward in all directions simultaneously. Now, while this might sound like total chaos to a linear thinker, to you, it's your natural, perfectly balanced state. This simultaneous expansion is what allows you to effortlessly connect seemingly unrelated fields, like noticing the underlying mathematical geometry in a piece of classical art, or finding an artistic rhythm inside a really complex algorithm. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer power of multi-layered cognition. It's honestly staggering. By thinking in webs, you're able to easily hold multiple and sometimes completely conflicting perspectives all at once without experiencing cognitive dissonance. You can deeply explore opposite sides of an argument simultaneously just to find the objective truth. You process parallel ideas seamlessly without ever feeling overwhelmed by the endless possibilities. And best of all, it allows you to zoom all the way out and see the massive bigger picture while still meticulously tracking the absolute minute details at the exact same time. It is an incredibly rare ability to navigate pure complexity without losing your footing. Redefining genius, the depth of your reality. Look, intelligence beyond a certain point isn't about showing off. It's not about scoring the highest on standardized tests or knowing the most arbitrary trivia. True extreme intelligence shows up in the profound depth at which you think and process your environment. It's defined by an absolute clarity of mind that just cuts right through the noise. It requires an incredibly high adaptability to constantly shifting systems. And crucially, it is marked by an unwavering willingness to relentlessly question your own assumptions. That last point is massive. It's the ultimate differentiator between actual, genuine intelligence and mere ego. Truly intelligent people are never afraid to be wrong if it means getting closer to the truth. If you relate to these signs, please don't downplay your habits just to fit in. Embrace the depth of your own reality. I really want to end today with a provocative question drawn directly from our source material to help guide your self-reflection. Ask yourself, do you feel like your mind processes things differently from most people, or are you just moving faster? Think about which of these signs hit closest to home for you today. And whatever you do, never stop exploring the fascinating architecture of your own mind. Thanks so much for focusing in with me today, and I'll catch you next time.